Videos like this are made possible by viewers like you. So if you've been here before, you might know that I used to be a follower of Teal Swan, who I believe is running an online pseudo-therapy cult with New Age spirituality themes. As with anyone who leaves a group like that, I had a lot to sort out in my head after I left, and honestly, I'm still sorting some of those things out. What I want to give you today is like a little glimpse into what was going on in my head when I was sort of stepping away from that group and starting to figure things out for myself a little bit. But I'm going to do it with a video clip. I'm going to do it with a video that I made at that time. So let's talk about this. Hello everyone and welcome back. If you're new here, my name's Andy Fellows and I make videos on cult skepticism and making sense of life after New Age spirituality. If you're interested in a more skeptical and grounded approach on New Age spirituality, then why not subscribe to the channel and hit the bell? So after I left this group and I was trying to sort stuff out in my head, I gave myself the title of spiritual teacher and started making videos, which I think in my mind they were my teachings. Even though it was supposed to be my teachings, what it really kind of was just sort of whatever was in my head that day, sort of like a word vomit situation. I'll put the first clip on in a second, but what you're about to see is me sort of post Teal, but pre sort of ending up my own arse with a load of spiritual stuff for another year or two. There was sort of like this moment here where I was sort of done with a lot of stuff, but I was yet to come into a lot more stuff, which I would just sort of take and run for a little bit. So I think what you're seeing here is somewhat of a prototype of the now me that's talking to you. Oh, by the way, I'm watching this for the first time for years now with you. So I have no idea what we're about to watch. All I know is sort of generally what it was because I remember it and going by the name of the video. But yeah, I don't actually know what we're about to see. So if you're cringing, I'm cringing too. Just anyway.
The spiritual server is full of so much bullshit, let's be honest. There's so much superficial, artificial, nonsensical, parroting bullfuckery that most of the time it's hard to make head nor tail of the majority of it.
So that's true. I think that I've made a true statement there on a level, but I don't know why I'm doing this Captain Jack Sparrow thing. Why? I have no idea. Also, bullfuckery, I'd like to bring that back.
Spirituality is full of so many things. It's so rich, it's so diverse. It's full of so many shiny and wonderful things. And some things might be amazing for one person while they're completely ridiculous for another. Some things might be really interesting for one person while they might be really dull for another.
Point of clarification, this clip, if you see sort of on my head, there's sort of some darker patches sort of going along here. That was eczema. During this time, I was sort of, I would say I wasn't doing great mentally, mental health wise. I've talked about that before, so I won't go into it now. There's a bunch of videos I've talked about it in, which I will link.
For me, all this stuff to do with ascension and codons and I'm going to channel Saint Germain right now, all of that to me feels like an accessory.
So here you can see there's under the surface that I'm fed up, right? And I'm letting it out a little bit here. This was sort of at the tail end of a number of months where I was trying to use everything that I had at my disposal for spiritually to try to get myself out of a situation that I was in, where my living situation was I was about to not be able to live there as far as I was aware. My mental health, following sort of months and months and months of shadow work and following Teal Swan's advice, which didn't really work out for me, I kind of reached out to other people, sort of spiritual people, to try and get them to help me, and that didn't really work either. So I'm at this point now where I'm like fed up and I'm rolling my eyes at shit. I think the interesting point here is the comment on these things being an accessory. If you're looking for something sort of that's going to help you spiritually, I wouldn't recommend anybody looks at the New Age. I just feel like it's not able to provide there and could perhaps cause more trouble than it's worth. And a lot of what I'm alluding to there, yeah, is the sort of fluffy stuff that New Age has come out with. As being, you know, an accessory.
It's cool, it's interesting, but for me it's not like the main meal, it's more of a side order. It's not clothing, it's jewellery. You're not clothed, you're not being kept warm, you're just adorned with all these things. Is it helping? That's open for debate. Personally, I like the stuff that I know is helping.
I'm mixing my metaphors. I'm trying to make a point. I'd be probably a little bit less on the fence about whether it's helping or not. Having had several more years' experience, I can now safely say that most of it didn't help.
I like psychology and spirituality intertwined, but that is just me.
I'm speaking there in that clip as someone who doesn't know very much about psychology. I think the exposure to psychology that I had really up until that point was Teal's version of psychology, which if you've ever watched Teal Swan, you'll know it goes through a filter for her. It's maybe legit psychology at the beginning, and then it goes through this sort of Teal filter and comes out Teal's version of whatever it is. And so when I'm talking about psychology and spirituality intertwined, I'm talking about that, essentially. Although, interestingly, at this point, I had sort of sworn off Teal's processes and all that kind of stuff.
To express what I mean about how for one person it's amazing and one person it's a load of shit, I've got an example. So you walk into a restaurant and you look at the menu and you see one thing on that menu that you sort of really like, and everything else looks ridiculous. It's like, why would anyone order that? You see some tripe like spirulina and kale wank muffin and you think, what kind of an idiot, what sort of a person is going to order that?
So one thing that really does strike me here is that I feel like I'm coming across as someone who feels like they know something, but what I'm saying is sort of nothing. Like, why did I feel the need to use a metaphor to explain what I meant by some things are good for some people and some things aren't for others? Some people like some things and other people don't like those things. Why did I feel the need to use a menu metaphor for that? Like, that's not the bit that needed clarifying. Let's be fair.
And then, lo and behold, someone swans in, adorned head to toe in crystal-infused, tie-dyed bin bags, and they say, "Excuse me, Earth being? Yes, sir, yes, you, sir. I would like to order the kale and spirulina wank muffin. My intuition tells me that it's necessary for my ascension."
This is an Andy that was fed up. This is an Andy that was promised things and those things weren't delivered, right? I was still very close to it. I was still very much, upset by what was going on. I do feel like these videos were my way of expressing that to the larger world. I kind of want to bring that character back.
My intuition tells me that it's necessary for my ascension.
I like her.
Now, I see that person and I think, that is the sort of knobhead that would order the kale and spirulina wank muffin, probably just because it's got kale or spirulina in the title, even though it's still a wank muffin.
Some surprisingly astute observations there. I don't hate this, honestly. Like, I certainly don't agree with where it's coming from in terms of the beliefs that I still had at the time that I no longer have. A lot of what's being said here is pretty on point commentary, I think. Drawing from that sort of JP Sears before he went super wild and got red-pilled, back in the day. I'm enjoying this. Honestly, I'm enjoying this. I hope you're enjoying this too. If you are, by the way, please like the video.
All jokes aside though, spiritualized, there's a lot of great stuff out there. But there's also a lot of shit. Now, intuition is one thing. Using your intuition to discern whether something is good, useful, worth it, whatever, is one thing, but there is no adequate replacement for asking good questions.
Oh shit. I literally just said there's no adequate replacement for asking good questions. I was onto something, and if this is your first video here on the channel, then you'll know why when I say my sign off at the end of the video. Stick around for that laughter. I'm alluding to a form of skepticism, which I at that point hadn't really nailed down, and as I say, I think the proof is in the pudding in that for about 1.5 years, maybe 2 years after this, I got fully into a different kind of sort of spiritual. I guess it's sort of new agey still, because it was very inspired by Eckhart Tolle, who's like the godfather of modern new age spirituality in a sense. But it was also sort of very non-dualistic-y, sort of Hindu-y inspired kind of stuff. Again, didn't really know enough about Hinduism to ground any of that. Obviously, I didn't quite nail that for a little bit longer, but that's surprising. That's a revelation for me. I had no idea that I'd put my finger on that.
First, the best thing to do is ask someone who is telling you about this stuff. If someone comes in and they say, this is going to activate your codons, then you can say to them, what are codons? Tell me all about codons. What are they?
I still don't actually know what codons are. Should we find out what codons are? Let's look it up. Do you know what codons are? Codons. Here we go. A codon is actually a thing, but like body stuff in biology. I have no idea how to make sense of this. I don't know what these words mean. This is exactly what I should have expected, because it's exactly what New Agers do. They take something that they have no fucking clue about, use the words, and use it for a spiritual purpose. If I'd looked that up when I was a New Ager, I would have been none the wiser, honestly. And I really doubt that other New Agers would have either. I think this is the same thing as when you hear New Agers going, well, quantum physics has proved the law of attraction. And you go, which study was it that proved that? Well, quantum physics has, yes, but quantum physics is a field of study. It's not, come on. This is an example of what you get in the New Age with overall scientific illiteracy and a desire to just believe whatever resonates, right? And then people end up using these words that they hear other people using. In some sense, either have some letters after their name and may have an understanding, but they've sort of twisted that understanding to sort of propagate their pet theory. And there's a lot of that in banned TED Talks, as far as I've seen. And then the New Agers sort of pick it up and run with it. And they go, oh yeah, it's going to activate your codons. This spirulina energy, crystal infused, blah, 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 is going to activate your codons. And sorry, what? Do you know? I don't think you know. I don't know. No one knows. Does anyone know? Okay.
If they know about it through and through, enough to offer you an adequate service based on that thing, then they'll answer all the questions you've got, and they will keep answering questions until you are happy with what you've been told.
There is a hole in this method of skepticism in two places. One, a person's willingness to answer questions doesn't necessarily show you whether or not they understand the thing. It just shows you that they're confident in answering questions about this thing that they think they understand. And whether they do understand it or not is not marked in their ability to answer questions. I think what I was alluding to here is the defensiveness that you often get when you ask people to explain things that are somewhat mystical, and they don't really want to. They want you to just sort of involve yourself in the vibe, you know, just sort of lean in. And the other way that I think that this skepticism has a slight hole in it is that I said that the end point of the questioning should come when you're happy with the answer. And I feel implicit within that is that at that point you believe them and you accept that it's true. And I'm a bit like, even if I've asked all my questions and they've been answered to a level that I feel satisfied with, I might still be wrong. So I think it's worthwhile, to use a phrase from Ram Dass, grip loosely. I think we should be setting certain things aside and not taking them as gospel, if you like. Especially if we're using biological terminology for some sort of New Age spiritual healing thing. I think then we can put a lot of that aside. And if we're going to take it on and try it out, I think we should do that sort of in a light-hearted way and maybe not pay out the arse for it. Definitely not.
If not, then chuck it in the bin.
If you're asking a bunch of questions and you can't... you're not getting answers that are satisfying you, then maybe chucking it in the bin's reasonable. I don't know, maybe. Again, I feel like maybe just put it aside rather than chuck it in the bin.
Intuition is no replacement for asking good questions, but asking other people good questions is no replacement for asking yourself good questions.
Again, some true statements. Intuition is no replacement for asking good questions. However, I feel there's a time and a place for intuition, but we need to define intuition. I don't see intuition as something supernatural, like I know New Agers sometimes do, which I did talk about a little bit in my last video, by the way. So if you haven't seen that, check that one out. There's a link to that below.
When it comes to looking at any form of accessory or spiritual paraphernalia or jewelry or whatever we want to call it, there's these three questions I always ask myself. Number one, is this helping me to be real with myself, or is it just more shitty water to wade through?
I feel that's a fairly good question, and even now I somewhat ask myself a version of that, even though I don't necessarily do it explicitly. It's more in that feeling space. I suppose you could say I'm using my intuition to discern that. So in a sense, I'm still using that question now, in a way. Let's see what the other two questions are.
Does it contribute to my happiness and quality of life?
That's also a fairly good question, although I feel like your happiness isn't the most important thing at every turn, because sometimes, for example, while you can value happiness and want to get there at a point, you've got to be uncomfortable for a bit. You've got to face some harsh realities. You've got to overcome some things, and happiness may result after that. Although now also I would say that happiness isn't always my priority either. My priority is meaning. It's doing things that mean things to me. It's doing things that matter to me, you know? Living a life that has some meaning for me personally, versus looking for happiness all the time. Because I feel like when you're looking for happiness all the time, it's like you're chasing your own tail in a way. Like you're always looking for it somewhere else, doing something else. Whereas if you just focus on what matters to you, what has meaning for you, then happiness results when you include those things in your life, or when you make time for those things, if that makes sense.
And most importantly, am I taking this too seriously?
I'm sorry, but that is a fucking good question that I think even now I need to be asking myself. Like, thank you, past me, for reminding me to keep asking myself the question, am I taking this too seriously? Definitely I need to chill the fuck out sometimes and just take things a little bit less seriously.
Just think about those weird liney glasses that the ravers wear with, like, you know, the bits of plastic instead of lenses. If you want personal growth, if you want true sustainable development in terms of your personality, if you want to enhance your experience of life, those glasses, they're fun. But if you try and read a book with them, you're going to be disappointed. But even worse than that, if you try and look at the sun with them, you're going to get hurt.
Again, a valid point, actually. And I'm agreeing with myself here. It's quite interesting because some of the older videos I'd done looking at myself in that way, sort of looking at me when I was more sort of spiritual teachery and sort of more sort of culty and all that kind of stuff, I didn't really agree with any of the things I was saying. Like, I could see it on a level, but it was all sort of very fluffy and not really anything. But this, I can agree with some of this. I think some of this is sort of fair. I think, you know, might be fun to wear the rave glasses, but you can't always read a book very easily with them. You're gonna struggle. And if you use them to protect your eyes from the sun, you're going to get hurt. Exactly. Very good metaphor, past me. It seems I was incapable of making a point without a metaphor.
Are you looking to that to answer the bigger questions in your life? And if you are, does it have the necessary schools within it? Does it have the tools within it? Does it have the ideas, the philosophy within that particular teaching to actually answer your problems, answer your questions? Or is it just another thing that you're going to have to clear out later when you come to trying to figure out what the fuck is actually going on? When it comes down to it and you strip back the layers of yourself, is that another idea, label that you're clinging to that's going to create more issues later on for you?
Wow. I'm impressed with my past self here. I wish I'd taken this advice for the next 2 years after I made this video. Because I clearly made this and forgot. I think the main point I would add here, and I love that I'm adding to what I'm saying rather than disagreeing with it, but one thing I would add there is verifiability. If something is unverifiable, then that, I think, makes it something that you want to be more deliberately holding loosely, you know, and taking less seriously. I think verifiability is really important when we're talking about what can help. When we're talking about your psychology in particular, as I'm mentioning here, you know, the verifiability of a thing is important. Can we demonstrate that a certain thing is true? Can we demonstrate that a certain thing helps? If someone's just saying, I'll try this, and they aren't an expert on anything, or that, you know, they don't have qualifications, they haven't done the necessary training, and there aren't any studies to support that certain thing. If we're talking about psychology and mental health, I think it's really important to think twice before doing that thing, you know. Especially, most importantly, if you're dealing with mental health issues. I think, you know, you want to be careful where you're getting shit from. There we go. Honestly, I'm astonished by how much of that I agree with now. And I don't know whether that's a mark of how I'd got certain things right then, or how I'm still an idiot now. But I'm glad that some of that is stuff that I would say I still agree with. Obviously, I was missing certain important things which didn't help, and obviously I didn't take that advice later. If you've enjoyed this video and you want to help support the channel, the best way to do that is through Patreon. There's a link to that in the description below. Otherwise, I'm Andy Fellows, and I'm here pretty much every Thursday. Please subscribe to the channel, and please be kind and ask good questions, and I'll see you in the next one.